This is Geeks Unleashed, episode 49.
Now, if you had asked me for a torch, I would literally be looking for like something to set on fire. I would not be looking for a flashlight.
No, it's a torch. Hello, welcome to Geeks Unleashed. This is episode 49. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jasmine.
And each week we cover the news of the week, and then we pick a couple of things to review that caught our fancy in TV, comics, movies, and games. This week's reviews are The Time Before Time, issue 1 from Image Comics, and the entire season of Jupiter's Legacy on Netflix.
And spoiler warning, this is a review show. So if you have not had a chance to read Time Before Time or watch Jupiter's Legacy, you might want to pause this and come back later. Then at the very end, we'll give you a couple of recommendations of our own.
We know that last week we gave you a lot. So we'll jump straight into things, but also we've got a bit of a surprise for you. You're going to get 2 episodes this week, so we won't go on overly long. And we've got a surprise for you as we'll be dropping our 50th episode, and we're going to drop it midweek. So you're kind of going to get 2 episodes for the price of 1.
50! 50! Can you believe we've been doing this for 50 episodes?
You know, I remember joking with you when we hit our 25th episode, but 50 episodes. So we'll tell you what to expect in our 50th episode at the end of the episode, so stay tuned. Yeah. So jumping straight into news, because there's a lot of stuff that came out this week, and it's always good to jump into it when there's a lot going on. So the Venom trailer dropped to, I would say, more hilarious reactions than positive. So Sony dropped the first trailer for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It kind of looks like it's going to be the same movie as the first. I mean, there's some humor in there, and it probably would be a good popcorn film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
listen, the first Venom film was not good, but I enjoyed it immensely. Like, I recognize that it was a not good film, but I enjoy watching it. So I'm expecting more of the same from this one.
So we've got what's his name? I've actually gone blank.
Tom Hardy or Woody Harrelson?
No, yeah, I've gone blank. Yeah. Sorry, cut this bit out completely. We've got Woody Harrelson is going to be Celtus Cassidy, who is in other words known as Carnage, and he was teased at the end of the last Venom movie, which you just said. The first film was okay. Like, I went to the cinema and saw it with a couple of friends. We went in and it was a good popcorn thing. We went had a couple of beers first. We went and watched it. I think that's probably the way to watch this.
Yes, I definitely had a few drinks before I went to watch Venom, for sure. That's the only way to do this.
I watched the trailer for the second Venom film, and I watched it and I was like, when I watched the trailer, I thought I would watch this film. Like, that was my reaction.
Oh, I'm gonna watch it for sure.
However, I also thought this looks like a pile of shit. Like, so like,
I have to say though, I think that they did a good job with switching that wig that they had Woody Harrelson in, because that first wig from the first movie, when they first showed him in that jail cell, I was like, dear God, why did you put Woody Harrelson in that ugly, hideous red hair?
And then I liked the scene. I liked it, but I want to say it was still terrible, where Venom is kind of helping Eddie Brock make his breakfast, and then just throws down this pile of crap on a plate. And I know that they've done it because they're trying to be a little bit like Marvel with the humor, and not, and they're trying to be a bit like Marvel, but Sony don't know what they're doing. Sony, come on, man. Just so I remember exchanging some private messages, not online, with some people where I said I really hoped that the first Venom movie was going to bomb, so that Sony then would say, look, Marvel, we need your help, like they did with Spider-Man. So I'm kind of hoping that Let There Be Carnage will bomb as well. I've got to be honest with you, that Sony turns around and says, look, we fucked up.
Like, yeah, no. I think that is some serious wishful thinking.
I don't reckon it will bomb. I reckon it will do well again, which I
think it's going to be hard for any film to bomb in the next year, just because people have been so cooped up. Like, people are going to go out to the movies, even if it's not really something they're interested in watching.
Oh, no, yeah. I think you're going to get a lot of people watching this pile of shit, even though it's probably not going to deserve it. So,
yeah.
And unfortunately, we'll get a Venom 3. God knows what they're going to do with Venom 3. I think, if I think they're bringing in Carnage too early, in my opinion.
Who would you have brought in instead?
I don't know. Actually, it's a good question. Actually, like, what could Venom have? So the thing is, like,
because I know you read the comics, but I don't read Venom, so I don't know who else you'd bring in.
Unless the other thing is because we've just had Noel in the comics, like with Donny Cates. Now they wouldn't have probably had this all planned with the first Venom movie came out. The whole storyline with Donny Cates is Noel hadn't happened. Now, obviously, that's been a big thing. Could they say, oh, this is probably the only way I'd get on board with this, is if they were to sow the seeds of Noel potentially for a next film, which would be fairly amazing. However, Noel went up against all the Marvel superheroes, and considering this is only a Venom movie, like, would it be realistic for Venom on his own to take down Noel? Not really.
No.
So I personally would have probably held Carnage back for a third film, but considering they're doing things like Morbius, and they've also got the other rights to all the other Spider-Man villains, like, and they've talked about having a Black Cat movie and Silver Sable movie. Could you have maybe had a Venom movie with a couple of other Spider-Man villains in? I don't know, like, and then maybe lead up to Carnage in the next film. So I don't know, like, you know, I don't really think Sony know what they're doing anyway half the time. So I mean,
I think if they had brought Noel in, that would be sort of the way that you felt about Justice League, where it's just like, you haven't earned this film at this stage yet. You haven't earned a film that's big enough to carry a villain like Noel yet.
I don't mean like Noel for the second film. I mean like building up to Noel. But I think the trouble is Venom, as we know, is a big part of the Marvel universe, and Sony's trying to hive out its own, what do they call it? Marvel universe of characters or something. Sony's given its universe its own name or something. I can't remember. But like trying to hive out its own kind of universe, just purely based out of Spider-Man villains. I don't know. It's a weird way of looking at Sony are desperately trying to hold on to stuff. They recognize that they can't manage Spider-Man, and I mean we've got some of the best Spider-Man movies ever. You know, I did like the original.
Oh yeah, Tobey Maguire minus Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, the first two Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire were brilliant. Like, I mean, but then what they did was in Spider-Man 3 they rushed it again because they pumped it with too many villains, Sandman and Venom and stuff like that. I don't know. Anyway, release dates for Venom are the 15th of September in the UK and the 24th of September in the US.
So taking a serious turn here, Tom Cruise, you may be familiar with the name, has returned his 3 Golden Globe Awards amid the Hollywood Foreign Press, the HFPA controversy that is kind of taken Hollywood by storm, or like insider Hollywood by storm. So the story behind that, Hollywood Foreign Press Association are the voting board that is responsible for the Golden Globe Awards. Last year, I believe it was, all of this kind of fallout started to come to light, where their former president was quoted as having said some very racist and kind of homophobic things. And their, surprisingly, their diversity and inclusion chief was also caught up in a scandal of saying some very inappropriate things. So the the Hollywood Foreign Press Association has been accused of not really giving a shit about diversity, which, fair to say, so to speak. 86 members, not a single Black person among them, even though they're supposed to be representative of Hollywood and supposed to be objective in their views on Hollywood films. It's not looking so good for them because of all of this controversy. HBO, Netflix, Warner Media Group, and even NBC, who carries the Golden Globes ceremony. NBC has canceled the Golden Globes ceremony broadcast for 2022. And Netflix, HBO, and Warner Media Group, among a few, there are several others, have pulled their support for the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and will not be submitting any of their works for consideration with the Golden Globe Awards. So amid all of those things, Tom Cruise also returned his 3 awards. He won the Best Actor for, what was it? Born on the 4th of July. Best Actor for Jerry Maguire, and then a Best Supporting Actor for Magnolia. Put them in a box, boxed them up, dropped them in the mail, and sent them right back to the Golden Globes. So Golden Globes are kind of a mess right now, and this is all coming on the heels of back in 2015 when April Rain started the Oscar So White hashtag to call out the lack of diversity behind the scenes. The Oscars have, I don't want to say progressed, but they have sort of started to move in the right direction. Looks like the Hollywood foreign press is lagging behind significantly. So that's just another one of the high profile things. I think it's going to hurt them more. Yes, it says a lot when an actor, especially an actor as deeply rooted in Hollywood as Tom Cruise, does something like this, but it says a lot that the big names are pulling their money out of these campaigns as well. And for NBC to cancel the entire broadcast of the Golden Globes for 2022 says a lot.
I think Golden Globes always think of Ricky Gervais and his speeches.
He is the worst Golden Globes host. I don't know why they always ask him to come back. Like, you make the audience uncomfortable.
I know, but that's what I love. Like, I love seeing their faces. Like, just
oh my god,
like, was it Tom Hanks? Like, honestly, Tom Hanks's face is just priceless when he speaks. I honestly, I had a whole night where I went on YouTube and I just watched every single Ricky Gervais Golden Globe speech, and every year he gets more and more comfortable destroying the celebrities, and but also he slags off the foreign press as well, and he constantly, and I remember one of his jokes was so there wasn't enough women directors, etc. And I think he said something along the lines of, so don't worry, I've had a word with the Hollywood foreign press, and we're going to go back to how it used to be, and they're just not going to put any of you forward anymore. Obviously he was saying that in jest, but he does destroy the Hollywood foreign press every year.
Yeah,
like he slags them off, but they seem to invite him back, but he's been saying for years stuff that is kind of coming out now. It's got I just find it like Ricky Gervais probably sitting at home going, I've been saying this for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Why have you only just realized now? I don't really rate Ricky Gervais too much in terms of an actor, but in terms of his honesty, he's fairly brutal. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where we're at a point in time where it's like, are awards like this even relevant anymore? Now, when I lived in LA and I actually would talk to people who were actors, they always said that for them personally, their favorite awards were the SAG Awards, which is the Screen Actors Guild Awards, because that the only people who can vote in the SAG Awards are actual SAG AFTRA members. Mm-hmm. So your fellow actors are voting on these things, not just some unknown body of people in the Hollywood foreign press or whatever you want to call them, or people that have been invited by the Academy to vote on these things. So a lot of of course, I don't know any top tier grade A Tom Cruise type actors, but the actors that I did know, they were it says a lot more if your peers think that you're good at this versus if some critic somewhere thinks that you're good at this.
I remember watching an episode of the X-Files where they did a whole episode that's focused on the cigarette smoking man. Do you remember that character in X-Files or not?
Yes.
So they did a whole episode dedicated to him, and they kind of showed a bit of sort of flashbacky, and they showed a scene where they said to him, who did he want to win the Oscars that year? It was basically he was part of some sort of Illuminati type thing, and they basically were I think he said to one of them, "I'll you choose," or something like that, and it was basically that's how to win the Oscars was just so fixed up.
Yeah,
I've never been a particularly big fan of award shows because I do find that they have always got a tinge of fixing to them. I find and they're not always necessarily reflective, I find, of what actually people think should win.
Right.
And so if you look at how there's pretty much, I think there's been, was it Black Panther was one of the few superhero movies to even get, am I right in that? To even get a nomination. So and if you think about actually Marvel and Disney have been kind of the big winners of movies in the last 10 years of what fans want and the audience want. Mm-hmm. But the Oscars and the Globes have just not been recognizing what the public want. It's like this art house movie wins an award, and it's but no one gives a shit about this.
30 people saw that movie versus the 150 million people that saw this movie. But it's also one of those things where I guess governing bodies like this just go to show how much bigger the gap has gotten between the consumers and the critics. And it's almost like everybody wants everything to be in this super elite, super exclusive category, but entertainment shouldn't be exclusive, right? Like entertainment should be accessible to everyone. So and I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that stuff like Commando or Predator should be winning Oscars. Like, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, like, you can't discount the popularity that those kinds of grade A blockbuster action movies have on I guess on the audience, right? Like, I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean's never going to win a Best Picture. It's won several other awards, but Pirates of the Caribbean was one of the first films to break that like 150 million opening weekend threshold. It's how can you discount that and say that films like that don't matter? $150 million on opening weekend, like, that matters.
But movies like that probably allow for these art house movies. So, like, I don't know exactly how the trickle down is, but there must be, like, there's always going to be a division of studios that, because they win big on a Pirates of the Caribbean film, can go, right, okay, well, now we've got the budget to pay for these smaller ones and take the risks, because they don't mind pumping in, I don't know, like 2 million. Like horror films are normally funded on a budget of like no more than 2 or 3 million.
On nothing,
So, but that, because they've won big on some other movies, then they can go, right, okay, well, we've got 2 or 3 million to fund on not necessarily a horror, but like a drama or something cheaper, which we know is more of a risk. And also, these smaller drama comedies don't make the money that Avengers makes. So, it's a gamble. But anyway, moving on to this, something I was really excited about. I'm obviously a 39-year-old man who was a child in the 80s. And when I saw that He-Man is coming back, I was like, finally. But also the stills that they released were not shit. They were not like the new Thundercats one that's come out, which looks, I wouldn't even watch it. It looks awful. The new Thundercats one. It's it's not Ren and Stimpy, but it's that kind of just shit animation that I don't like. So He-Man released 10 stills, and it's from the same team that did Castlevania. It's coming out at the end of July. It's coming out on the 23rd of July. The man behind this is a man that I've got great faith in, Kevin Smith. I would assume most people have got faith in this man. So it's going to be released in 2 parts. The first part is going to be 5 episodes, which will be 1 arc, all dropping on the same day on the Netflix platform. And the cast of this is also getting excited. Yeah. Do you know what, like, the animation for this looks good. However, the actors. So we've got Mark Hamill as Skeletor, Lena Headey as Evelyn. One person I'm really excited about, obviously being a huge Buffy fan. When I say huge Buffy fan, I'm talking about the actors and the creators, and not
that dude that produced it and all that shit.
Yeah. So Sarah Michelle Gellar is Teela, which I'm so excited that Sarah Michelle Gellar is in something like this. Chris Wood, who people may know from Supergirl, he is also married to Supergirl in real life. Chris Wood will be playing the He-Man himself / Adam. Tiffany Smith as Andra. I don't know who Andra is. I can't think. Anyway, so but there's loads of others apparently are going to be in here as well. Like,
these are the ones I'm super excited about. The voice casting world knows these names without question. Phil Lamar, Tony Todd, Cree Summer, Kevin Michael Richardson, and Kevin Conroy. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah. But Alicia Silverstone as well. Like, finally, she's been given a job. Did they find her somewhere? Like, but I used to love Alicia Silverstone. I mean, I've got to be fair, it's the one movie that I love her from, like, Clueless. But it is great though to see these big names coming out, and I'm so excited for He-Man. We'll definitely, if we haven't put it, I know that we've kind of got a little bit of a schedule going. I don't think
we haven't gotten that far in July yet, but I'm sure He-Man's going to be on our list.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be covering He-Man. So come back and hear our thoughts in July. Well, no, stay with us. Don't come back.
Stick around. So again, keeping up with the Child of the 80s theme. If you ever owned anything by Mattel or Hasbro, this is our season, man. This is our time to shine, because we are getting a Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins trailer dropping tonight. Well, Sunday night, during the MTV Movie Awards, which I didn't even realize that the MTV Movie Awards were still a relevant thing that happened, but apparently they are. So
they're probably relevant to 16-year-olds, probably.
Yeah, I think I just aged out of that demographic. Yeah. So the first official trailer is going to be dropping very soon, but they did release some stills from the film. It's the first time we see Henry Golding in character. We see a lot of other characters too. Andrew Koji, who's playing Tommy. Andrew Koji, by the way, fantastic in Warrior. If you have not watched that series, you definitely should. Henry Golding, obviously, as Snake Eyes, Ursula Cabrera as Baroness, Haruka Abe as Akiko, and Samara Weaving as Scarlet. So all of those character posters have been released. I don't know, man. This film has a totally different vibe than the cheesy Marlon Wayans-led G.I. Joe films we've gotten in the past, 10 years. Not that there's anything wrong with those. I enjoyed them for what they were. They were fun to watch. Nothing to write home about.
I haven't seen those G.I. Joe films, but I still keep saying I'm going to watch them. But that Snake Eyes trailer, even I was like, I would watch this.
Yeah.
Are they connected? Do you know? Are they connected to the previous ones, or is this a reboot?
I don't think so. I think it's a reboot. Okay. I think this is a hard reboot.
Okay, probably a wise thing. I mean,
yeah.
From what I heard, I remember the second one was a mess, and they kind of had to go back and add The Rock in, but it still didn't save it. So
yeah. He can't save everything.
Generally, The Rock can save a franchise, but yeah, G.I. Joe.
So yeah, I'm super excited. Plus, I love Henry Golding. He was really good in Crazy Rich Asians, but I'm excited to see kick-ass action version of Henry Golding. So bring it on. I am 100% ready for Snake Eyes.
Okay, so also this week, Black Widow dropped some posters, which I thought were pretty cool for the up-and-coming release, which is coming out on the 9th of July. And it's Marvel are sort of touting this as the beginning of their Phase 4 initiative, and it's going to be, as we know, coming out across Disney Plus, which is on their premium. You've got to pay for it. So you've got to pay for it one way or the other. Just hit the theatres, man. Support the theatres. So, if you've been double vaxxed and double masked and double belted and whatever, just get out there and honestly go and support your local theatre chain and go and see this movie. So anyway, the posters have come out, and I think these posters look amazing. So Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, Florence Pugh, honestly, that looks like, I think she's going to be some sort of Black Widow Mark II, but you've got David Harbour from Stranger Things, and I actually didn't realize Rachel Weisz was in this.
I love Rachel Weisz so much. She's fantastic.
But the big thing they're going on about is obviously the Taskmaster. So his poster looks pretty cool, and they've deliberately left who he is off of it, so nobody knows who the Taskmaster is.
Is he even a he?
Well, I suppose so. Is it she? Yeah. Could it be a she?
Well, see, that's the thing. They didn't draw boob armor, so everybody assumes that Taskmaster is a he, but he could be a she. Who knows?
Maybe it's Tony Stark. Maybe he's back. So.
Dun. It's also
Rogers,
the first time
old man Steve Rogers. Actually, no, because it's a flashback. It wouldn't be old man Steve Rogers. But anyway.
But it's also the first time that they've released the OT Fogbenley on a character poster. So is he Taskmaster?
That'd be clever. Yeah, maybe that's part of the thing. Who is Taskmaster?
Yeah.
That's a good actual twist there. They've all put all individual posters, but could Taskmaster be one of the characters?
Yeah. My money's on Rachel Weisz. Just saying.
Yeah, that's a good twist.
I don't think we've seen any scenes with Taskmaster and her character in the same sequence, in the trailer at the very least.
I've tried to really stay away from these trailers. So
yeah, don't want to reveal too much.
No, man. That's the trouble. Do you know what? Actually, I always criticize Netflix for this. If you go onto Netflix, you can't watch a Netflix trailer because they show you the whole thing in a trailer. That's happened to me a few times, and now I just won't watch Netflix trailers. They literally show you the whole plot, from start to finish, and you've seen the trailer, and you're like, okay.
Well, I'm good. Next.
Yeah. Anyway, we will wrap up our news of the week, and we will move on to our first of two reviews. So we're going to take a single issue of the first issue for Time Before Time, which came out from Image Comics this week. So me and Jasmine actually have been discussing more moving away from single issues in that podcast, because having a single issue is like reviewing one scene from a movie, and it does make it difficult to kind of really get a flavor for what actually is going on, because we could read one issue and not particularly like it, and then you read all 6 issues in one go and you're loving it. However, I picked this up and I was like, oh, we've got to review this. We hadn't initially planned to review this, but I was like, no, we've got to do it. I really enjoyed this. So it's written by Declan, I think it's Shalvey, and sorry if I've mispronounced your name, Rory Conville. Anyway, art is by Joe Palmer and Chris O'Halloran. I think I've got those ones right. Anyway, I have also seen it has been really well rated everywhere. iFanboy and Gem Mint have nominated this as their pick of the weeks. If you go to a website called Comic Book Roundup, they've given it a critic score of 8.7 and user score of 7.8, obviously out of 10. So overall, I think, you've got a good indication this is going to be a good book. I'd seen that stuff before I already picked it up off the comic shelves. And to give you a summary, this book is a time travel book. If you had not figured that out before time, probably don't pick it up. Anyway, so
we need to work on your context clues.
Yeah. So the book is set primarily in and around the year 2140, and it focuses on a guy called Tatsu. Tatsuo, sorry. And me just butchering names all the time. So, however, he works for a criminal organization called the Syndicate, which that name's been used to death.
Oh yeah, it's so generic.
But who cares about the name? So Mission Impossible use that name. So anyway, so he works for the Syndicate, and there's a lot going on in this book, and there's a lot. I think they do a good job throughout this first issue of kind of teasing a bit about him, teasing a little bit about the Syndicate, and just the whole world that they build in. And even right in the last couple of pages, they give you a brand new character, and we'll come to her in a minute. They give you a brand new character completely out of the blue. So the concept of this is that the Syndicate had 10 time machines, which they had got from somewhere else. And now they were down to their final one, because apparently they go faulty and stuff like that. And they run, obviously the Syndicate criminal organization have found a way to make money out of time travel. So if you're a criminal and you need to get out of the way from the boys in blue for a nice little fee, you can pay the Syndicate and they will take you to a different time zone to restart your life. So I thought the opening couple of pages were pretty cool. So it starts in 1987 when I was a little boy, and this guy is dropping off this mum and their child to relocate. And what I liked actually about the first couple of pages was that they were like, well, first of all, it was like actually almost like a proper witness protection type thing. He's like, right, your new IDs on the side, any kind of things they've got a little pack there, etc. And then the boy goes, oh yeah, he goes, oh, any questions? And the boy goes, yeah, what's the Wi-Fi password?
In 1987, good luck, kid.
Yeah, man. I didn't even know if dial-up had come out at that point.
No, not for normal people, and PCs were probably still the size of a freaking Mack truck.
Yeah, and I remember in 1987, you probably get a computer the size of a room at that point. So, and then he was like, boy, Wi-Fi won't be around for about another 10 plus years. And the boy goes like ape shit his mum and stuff. Anyway, so then he zips off to 2140, and then you see sort of him. It lays the groundwork a little bit more for him being in debt, and then he goes off and has some beers with his mate Oscar, which kind of leads to them actually sort of talking about their life and how they want to steal a pod, and they kind of start coming up with a plan. But then they go to work, and then the guy who's like kind of like the sort of the office manager, should we say, like warehouse manager. Yeah. Obviously, they must have. I don't know if they have job titles in criminal organizations, but he kind of splits them up and sends Oscar like on one pod, and because at this point they've got 2 pods, and sends Oscar on one pod, and then Tatsuo off on another one. And I thought this was pretty cool. He goes into 1963, and then he starts chatting to the guy who's dropping off, and he was a bit like, basically this guy alludes to he doesn't allude, he comes out of it. He says it, yeah. He doesn't, there's no beating around the bush. He comes out of it that he's a murderer. Yes. And he
had just run into a little trouble with the cops. No, dude, you're a freaking murderer. Like, you should be running into trouble with the cops. Yes.
So I wondered where that was going to go, but then Tatsuo just goes back to the future, and then he comes up to the boss of the Syndicate, who, when I say he's the boss, he is the boss. However, his dad kind of runs the organization, who you don't see in this issue. And then the boss sort of says, there's been some problems with Oscar when you were gone. He's come back, but go and see him at this nightclub. And then you sort of go off to the nightclub. And what I thought was pretty cool was they're kind of doing all this talking that Oscar's saying about all the stuff that went wrong. Because so Oscar went on a separate mission to the future when they went.
This was probably my favorite sequence in the book because, like, as he's talking about what he had been doing, he says numbers. He was like, yeah, and then after 5, I did this, and then after 9, I did this. And so in my head, I'm like, days. So 9 days you did this, and 5 days you did this. No.
And then like you say, that it's good. Like all of this is sort of narrate. Well, it's done almost like a narration style over the skyline throughout the nightclub.
People dancing in the club and all that shit. Yeah.
So and it's good build up, and then suddenly you turn the page and you get this full drop of actually Oscar's like 95 years old or something like that, sitting in like some sort of floating wheelchair.
A wheelchair with freaking oxygen tank taped to his face.
And Tetsuo is like. Like, so then he talks about time travel and going back to save him, which I wonder may happen. Like, I'm still not completely dismissed that wouldn't happen. And then Tatsu basically tells him that he's taking this drug that when he falls asleep, he'll die. And it's quite a sort of a sad moment. They sort of like, have a hug and stuff like that. And yeah, it's sort of renewed Tatsu's ambition to go and steal one of these pods. And it ends with a pretty cool moment because I was like so into this book. I was like, oh man, I wish I had like another 5 issues to read. Like, and I was like, they've done a really good build up here for me. Mm-hmm. And you see him go off to the pod and type in some details, type in like, presses a couple of numbers, and all of a sudden he's got a gun to the back of his head. Some girl tells him to get in the pod. They both jump in, and it's all kind of like exciting. You can imagine if it was like a TV show, it's all guns going off left, right, and center.
Because he's still trying to steal the pod. Like that was the plan that him and Oscar had. They wanted to steal the pod, pick a time period, and go there and hope that they could outrun the syndicate. So he is already going to be sent on the same mission that Oscar was on because Oscar didn't finish his mission.
No.
And so the boss, Heigl, is like, okay, well, we'll do it tomorrow morning. So Tatsuo goes to the place where the pod is and talks to the guards. And of course, they all know him. He's like, hey, timeline's moved up. He wants me to go tonight. And nobody really questions him. But then like all hell breaks loose when that woman shows up with the gun and then she shoots somebody and then all the other guys come running and now there's a shoot off. It's drama done well, actually.
And then the last 2 pages, like, where so every time it jumps between times, they do this good thing of putting the year like in big letters, taking up a whole panel. Yeah. But when they jump into the last 2 pages, the numbers are all skew if. So now you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And you don't even see the pod. So I'm wondering if they've done a bit of time travel without a pod somehow. I don't know, like what would happen.
I think the pod got destroyed. And now they can't get back to.
Oh well, that changes things about issue 2, and this is where reading issue 1 is kind of a bit difficult to really assess the whole thing because I liked the format of jumping around in time and seeing all these different characters. So will that format be gone from issue 2? I don't know. Probably, I would imagine. And then he finds out this girl's an FBI agent, and then it ends with to be continued. So, I kind of want to summarize my own thoughts on this. Oh, obviously. Artwork, etc. Obviously, don't want to leave the artwork out. I love the style of the artwork, but I think the artwork really suited this book because again, it's not a superhero book. This is something that I know time travel is not real, but it's done as if you never know. But I believe that time travel is not real, and it's set though as if things could be real. It's very real. There's like realism in there, so the artwork to me feels like it's very grounded. Much suited to the concept and grounded and much more realism.
This is definitely not a cyberpunk book. Like you hear the concept of time travel and you think, oh, everybody's going to be, we have chips and that's how you pay for everything. You don't have cards anymore, yada, yada, yada. But this is very, very recent, very current. It like they're in 2140, but it feels like it could be right now. Anyway, like there's nothing special about this future, not in the way that people dress, not in the cities that they live in, nothing. Like there's nothing about it, obviously, other than the time travel that would make you think that this is the future.
And I love the coloring because like the first page, they use a lot of purple. and you think, okay, is this going to be it? And then you sort of turn, as you keep going throughout the book, the coloring is different depending on what scene you're in, what year you're in. So like when he goes to 1963, they're pulling up a lot of yellows and browns, which I can imagine was probably very 60s in terms of, well, it just made me feel like that anyway. When I was reading it made me feel like I was reading something in the 60s. So in terms of this book, like I was like, my mind instantly starts playing around with how would this work? Like, and I was like, this would be a great TV show. Like, you know, you probably wouldn't have that whole moment with Tatsuo and the FBI agent happening, like probably to like the end of say season 1. You'd probably, this whole first issue you can imagine would be like a whole season. But one of the things I was really thinking was I would love to see if they, I don't know how, this is an ongoing book, but I would love to see some of the characters that they dropped off in the past, like the murderer guy getting a whole issue to himself. And I know like sometimes they do that in comics. Like I'm trying to think of ones where like they're more independents, like DMZ or you know, all those kind of Vertigo books and things like that, where they'll just randomly go off and just focus on an individual character for an issue or a couple of issues, which I think are cool. Like, you know, where, you know, that guy got like one scene, but actually how cool would it be if, say, I don't know, issue 12, they go back to the murderer guy and you get to see like what happens. Like, I mean, I'm not sadistic. I don't want to see him like butchering people, but like, it would be cool to see how he adjusted and maybe he's the one who gets hunted. Like, because he's obviously thought he was brilliant in the future and he obviously now's got to get familiar with the 60s. I don't know, just kind of, it would be a really cool format to play with. I think there's a lot that they've done here in the first issue to make me excited about the future of this book.
Or what if that kid that went back to 1987 becomes like Bill Gates or
I can imagine, like,
or the guy from Apple.
Well, suddenly, the thing is, I guess you don't know like what the repercussions will be. Like, how do you know you've not dropped him off? And he creates a third user system rather than Apple and Windows. He create, you know, or Android. You know, he creates some fourth operating system, and like, you know, people just, you know, they're dropping people back, but they're not necessarily thinking about the repercussions. And that's something you see a lot in time travel, is they talk about the repercussions. But in this book, no one seems to really care too much about the repercussions. It's like, how can we make money out of it? So it made me think of Looper a little bit. Have you seen Looper? It made me think of Looper a lot, this book. So I personally, I really love this book. And you said you did as well. So I think,
either like a Looper or Jumper. It's very much along the lines of both of those.
So we rated the art 4 out of 5 and the story 4.5 out of 5, and we're all, well, I'm definitely intrigued to see more.
Yeah, I think the concept is really interesting. Plus, bringing in that FBI agent at the very, like, literally the last 2 pages, it was kind of like, wait a minute, first of all, who the hell is she? How did she get there? How did she know what was happening? And like you said, every time you switched time periods, it told you what time you were in, and now we have no idea because none of the numbers make sense. And so it's kind of like, where are we? Did you guys land where dinosaurs are? Hopefully you didn't go that far back, but like,
you know, that's what I started to think. I was like, oh, can you imagine if they just, like, there's a T-Rex around the corner? I mean, if that stuff like that happened, then they're clearly going to need someone to come get them. But yeah, who knows what's happened? You know,
they leave it wide open. It's a really great cliffhanger because literally, like, you're gonna find out where they are in the next issue, but like, it's a really good cliffhanger.
I was so excited by this book. I'm definitely all in for this, and just seeing the praise it's got online. I can imagine if you're the creators of this book, it must be nice to see your first issue being this well received. So, I'm keen to read more. Like, it's a shame sometimes when these books don't come out twice a month. Just to wait 30 days for issue 2 is going to be a painful ride. So, I want to know how this cliffhanger is going to go.
All right, so moving on to our next review.
If Ghostbeam hadn't stepped in, Faulkner would have killed that asshole.
Well, maybe he deserved it.
Do you really believe that?
This war's not like it used to be, Grace. Don't tell me you don't see it.
Of course I see it, Fitz. My son took a life. I mean, he turned against everything we taught him, and he took a life.
Jupiter's Legacy, Season 1 on Netflix. It is based on characters created by Mark Millar and Frank Wiley, developed for TV by Stephen DeKnight. It stars Josh Duhamel, Ben Daniels, Leslie Bibb, Andrew Horton, Elena Camparas, Mike Wade, and Matt Latner. We kind of figured the best way to talk about this is just to jump straight into what we liked and what we didn't like about the series.
It's because it's 8 episodes, and we're not going to go through the entire plot from start to finish.
And the timestamps on the episodes are all over the place. Like some episodes are 36 minutes and some episodes are 56 minutes. So it's all over. This series was kind of confusing. Not just the TV series, but also trying to figure out what order you read the comics in, if you wanted to go back and read the comics to kind of give you a little bit more insight. I'm just the thing that stood out to me the most about this series, and I'm gonna sound, I don't know, call it hypocritical if you want, but like the people who say, oh, there's too much politics and okay, I'm not gonna say that much, but this series is very preachy. It's very heavy-handed on there is only one path to goodness. And that path to goodness is what we have to live by, regardless of what the consequences are. And that theme pops up at the very beginning, and it's a theme that we see throughout the entire series. I think probably what I liked the most about this series is that you get to kind of watch the characters who bought into this decide for themselves whether or not they still believe it. So the background is back in the 1920s, right before the Great Recession or Black Tuesday. There is a family. Sheldon is the youngest brother. Walter is the oldest brother, and their dad all have a big stake in the steel industry. Now, that's back in the time during Rockefeller and Carnegie, when all of those names were the guys that were shaping the American future. So this company, they carved out a spot that they probably took some business away from the Carnegies and the Rockefellers. So then the stock market crash happens. Well, when the crash happens, we find out that Daddy has been using the workers' pensions at the steel factory to play the stocks. And when everything fell, so goes all of the workers' futures. Well, of course, that's one of many stories of what happened back in 1929. And as a result of the crash, Daddy jumps off of a building in front of his youngest son. So now we have this fractured family, a younger son who was shielded from the actual business that was happening. And the younger son is played by Josh Duhamel. The older brother is played by Ben Daniels. So they have to come to a reckoning of, you're the youngest and you think you know what's going on. You have no idea what Dad and I were doing when we were running this company. And so for most of the series, even as we get to the present day, when these characters are well over 100 years old, it's still a fight between brothers, where it's kind of like, you were the one that had everything. You were the one that Dad gave you everything and let you get away with whatever you wanted to get away with. And I was the brother that had to be responsible, and I didn't get to enjoy myself the way that you did. So there's this dichotomy of, the golden child versus the ox that bore the brunt of the load. So that theme kind of goes throughout the whole series. Now, another thing I liked, a lot of times with superhero stuff, you buy into, this is a superhero thing. Like, sure, you can fly and you have laser vision. I have no idea how you can fly or why you have laser vision, but there it is. So with this series, what they do is they use flashbacks a lot. I mean, I think the half the series is probably told through flashbacks, but in the flashbacks, it's not really, yes, it's a little bit of character development, but to me, the flashbacks are telling the story of how these people got superpowers, which is not something that you're used to seeing, right? You see it in films like Chronicles, like where these kids kind of stumble upon this thing and then this thing gives them power. Whereas in Jupiter's Legacy, it is it's almost like a video game. It's like a giant quest across oceans, across continents, for them to come into these powers. The thing is, if you told the story of how the heroes get their powers, how the hell do we have all these villains? How did the villains get their powers? You told me how the superheroes get their powers, and you've played it off like these are the original 6 superheroes. Okay. So if we're buying it into superheroes started with you 6 people, first of all, how is it that in the present day, 100 years later, we have all of these kids in a second generation that have powers, but there's only 6 of you? And of the 6 of you, 2 of you are married and 2 of you have 2 kids. Like, where do all these other superheroes come from? Where do they come from? There's a whole league of teenage superheroes, but like it doesn't explain how these kids get their. It's so bizarre to me. Like, you put so much emphasis on how these adults get their superpowers, how these 6 people become like the original 6. And yet in the present day, 100 years later, it's like, oh, there's, I don't know, 100 superheroes. How did everybody else go on this quest and survive the same way that these 6 did? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think, talking about the 1920s and the 1930s setting first, I enjoyed that much more than the present day setting.
Me too.
I was much more into the intrigue of the journey to the island and how he got there. And once he got there, they hardly explored the island. Right. It was hard, to be honest, it was a scene that probably was done over half an episode, the whole island thing, where we spelt sets, the whole setup to get to this island took, the whole season to get there.
And there is an entire character in that 6 that we only meet before they get to the island. And it's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Who the fuck is this guy? How did he come in at the second to last episode of the season? And we're supposed to treat him as an equal partner of one of the 6 when we literally just met this dude.
To be honest, this is where I pretty much didn't enjoy anything in the present. Like I
hated their kids. I'm just going to come out and say that their daughter was super annoying. Oh, okay, she has a drug problem. Boo-hoo. Like her and the son, I couldn't care less. Like, I could not have cared less about that second generation of heroes.
I think the trouble that this show, what it struggled with, is too many characters. Now, in the past, it was quite clear who the main characters were, and they kind of allowed the stuff in the past to be a little bit more fleshed out. But in the present, they were just, it was almost trying to be too showy, too CGI, too many, trying to show all these wonderful superheroes, and maybe they were trying to differentiate the differences between the past and the future. But I didn't really care about the future. I was watching, maybe we would care about it if, maybe if we'd have had a season 1 of the past, like just build up to the island or something like that.
If ever there was a time to split this up, this was the series to do that with, because it feels completely disjointed. Because not only because we're talking 100 years, well, almost 100 years.
Yeah.
But the characters that we met in 1929, they're almost unrecognizable in 2021. Like, what the hell happened to get you from this idealistic, naive person in 1929 to now you're this cynical hard ass in 2021? Like, how did we get here?
Well, they talk about, so in the future as well, they talk about, which this annoyed me a little bit, because I was thinking, if this is going to be the thing for Jupiter's Legacy, if each season's going to do a flashback, because they talk about the stuff that happened in the 60s. So, Matt Lanter's character, Sky Fox, they talk about how he betrays them in the 60s and takes the president hostage or vice president hostage or whatever. And I was like, oh, why are you saying this? I was like, why have you just told us this? Like, that would have been a really cool season and thing to have happened, like, to have shown us. Like, I was thinking, I would much rather say, I don't know, each season kind of show them getting to the present, like, and building around these 6. And you could have, I wouldn't say like each season to be a different decade. It could be that, like, season 1 is the origin story and how they're received in the past, because that would be, you don't often see stuff in the 1920s and 30s of superheroes. I know in DC they kind of concentrate on the Justice Society, but even the Justice Society hasn't had really the screen time that, unless it's an animated film, of how it's been received. So actually it would be pretty cool to have a TV show set in the 1920s and 30s, right? In America as well, long before even things like the Civil Rights Movement, when they've got a black superhero as well in this group. And
that is not the case in the comic.
Is it not?
He's a white guy in the comic. They're all white.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. Okay. Well,
earlier I said it's really hard to keep track of how to jump into the series if you wanted to read the comics. the Netflix show seems to go off of the chronological order that the release order that the comics were released in, whereas the labeling for the comic series is off, and so the labeling goes in chronological order. So when prepping for this, I read the wrong issue, and I read Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1, which actually is Jupiter's Circle and not Jupiter's Legacy. Anyway, it's very, very confusing. So in that issue, the whole thing takes place in like the 50s, 60s. So that's the decade in the issue, that the volume that I read. And they go into so much detail and background story about the characters. And I texted Mark and I was like, this has nothing to do with the TV show, like nothing at all, nothing whatsoever to do with the TV show. But even back then, it's like, I don't know what you guys are doing. One of the cool things about this series is, like you said, you don't see too many things about heroes in the 1920s, period, just because everybody usually focuses on the stock market crash or how desolate everything was at that time, or World War I gearing up. But like this, I thought that the cool thing about the going back in time is they bring in actual people. So in the volume that I read, Katharine Hepburn is in it, J. Edgar Hoover is in it. I mean, they're calling people by name, and it's really interesting to see this sort of superhero background set with actual characters from history versus, it was the president at the time. Like, well, some no-name president that we assume that you're talking about, Richard Nixon or whoever. Mm-hmm. So for them to actually use like FBI director J. Edgar Hoover and famous actress Katharine Hepburn, I thought that was pretty interesting. But that goes to show that, like you, Mark, I found the past far, far more compelling than the present. The present day stuff is so disjointed.
I think the trouble, because I watched this with my wife and we both said the trouble with the show is they've jammed too many characters in it and made it too confusing.
Yes.
And also the like you'll get, I was much more invested in the past, where actually that stuff, because they had fewer characters, it was a lot more compelling and a lot more interesting, and the origin story was a lot more interesting. But that's
where all the mystery was in the past.
Yeah, the mystery was there. So I would much more rather have seen, the build up to them getting powers. And because if they'd have just done the build up and not had the future stuff, I don't think you could have had a whole season building up to them getting the powers in the final episode, because that would have felt too long. But maybe like, I don't know, by episode 2 or 3, they get their powers, and then you see the rest of the season about how what they do with their powers in the 20s and 30s. That would be cool to me. And also like the redemption story of the sons with their father's business, and that could have been a nice ending to it. Mm-hmm. And then I would have much rather seen we not get to the present until, like, I don't know how long the show's going to go on for, but like, maybe season 5 or something like that. Let's earn getting there and actually care about these characters, mm-hmm. to then see the fallout. I think I don't know. It feels to me like they're trying to put too much in there to get everybody hooked on seeing these CGI battles. And don't get me wrong, that massive battle with
Black Star,
episode 1 with Black Star, with the Black mm-hmm. Star's clone, I thought that was amazing. So like the end of episode 1, when it ends with this huge fight with Black Star's clone,
just like eight heroes fighting this one guy.
Yeah, it was, it was an amazing sequence. I don't want to knock it. So the first 2 episodes, I thought actually between the jumps back and forwards were handled fairly well. I found it more from episode 3 all the way to episode 6 really lulled, and maybe that was the problem. Maybe it was just kind of a little bit dragged on, and then episode 7 and 8 I enjoyed, but however episode 8 was weird because it was like 36 minutes long. I did think, why didn't you just make episode 7 and 8 one episode, just make it an hour and a half long? I don't know, like it just seems a bit weird to me.
Yeah, I think though, like you said, they stuffed too many people in it, and that's the thing. Like as the series went on, with every episode it was kind of like, wait, so who are you again? And how are you connected to and how did you get here? Like, I just kept having more and more questions, and I wasn't getting answers to any of the questions that I had. And if, like you said, if we're going to break this up and you're trying to kind of split it, the entire story arc with the daughter, Chloe, and with the son of Star Fox, Hutch, that entire sequence, that whole thing could have been saved for the second season, because that seems like a very important connection that is probably going to go on much longer. And it's just like, why did you rush into that? Plus, by rushing into it, you're not giving the characters enough time to develop. You're not giving the audience enough time to get attached to these people. Plus, Chloe, up to this point, has literally done nothing to actually be likable. So you have no empathy for her, for what she's going through, because she's such a dick about everything. And it's just kind of like, I don't care about her.
And then they also, so they present this ongoing mystery in the future of Black Star and Black Star's clone, and it's really weird, the twist that happens at the end, because I called it about 3 episodes before it happened, and I actually said to my wife, I bet you any money, and I don't want to say it in case, like, I know we've said no spoilers at the beginning of the episode, but in case you haven't watched it, there's a bit of a twist of who the villain is of season 1.
Yeah.
And I like said like 3 episodes earlier, I bet you any money he is behind it.
Yeah.
And I said he looks like a villain.
Yes, that's exactly. As soon as he came on screen in the 20s, I was like, this guy's a bad guy. He has to be. He has the look.
So I won't say anymore. But anyway, overall, I didn't enjoy this show. I'm not sure about season 2 for me. And because of the disjointedness of the graphic novels, apparently a lot of people have said that the graphic novels are really good, but they've said if you read them volume 3, then volume 1, then volume 2, then volume 4, it works.
Yeah.
So
which I did not know that going into it, so I bought and read the wrong one. I did not hate it. However, and personally,
you just intensely disliked it.
Well, no, I didn't. It wasn't intense either. Like it just, it's like indifference, which is almost worse, right? So like I've always maintained that I am a fan of a really good villain, and the series lacks that until
because
you get to the last couple of episodes. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. But that's a problem. Like any kind of, especially in the superhero. I mean, you need a good bad guy in any genre, but especially in the superhero genre, you need a good villain. Otherwise, your heroes can't be heroic if they're not fighting anything worth fighting. So them playing up Black Star the entire first 8 episodes of the season, it was just kind of like, Black Star's in prison already. Like, what the hell? Like, he is already captured. You have already defeated him. How am I supposed to get behind him as the villain when he literally sits on his bed and reads for 8 episodes?
To be honest, the whole thing about the Black Star's clone thing, I thought, would they really dive into this as much as they did, like rebuilding his mind? And then
no.
I just thought, I can't see them really doing that. Like, I can't see them like rebuilding his mind and then going in there. And I just, it felt too elaborate. And to be honest, at one point, I even forgot that was even going on because this is too much going on. There was basically, you had sort of 3 kind of main plots going on. You had like, the daughter, the drug problem, and her dating Star Fox's son, and them all being villains and druggies and all that kind of stuff. And then you had the past stuff going on. And then you also had this storyline with Black Star and his clone. And I'll be honest, I did lose track, and there was too much going on. It could have been almost, I don't know, 2 or 3 seasons worth of stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I wouldn't have wanted it to be stretched out by any means, like with filler episodes, if you'd have spread it out a little bit more. But I don't know. For me, the show didn't work, and it was just too much going on. It was too chaotic. I think the overall show just felt really disjointed. And I think when we were prepping as well, we realised that the development who ran the show, the developer and the showrunner, was it Stephen denied? Didn't you? He just sort of left, didn't he? Or he got replaced midway through as well.
Yeah, I got replaced.
Or
he left. I don't know what the real deal is there.
But that says a lot as well about a show and why it felt disjointed. Changing showrunners mid season is not a good idea at all. So they probably kept what he did, and then they got, it's a bit like what we had with the bloody Snyder cut. Like it's. Maybe if we'd get the night cut, we might end up with a better season.
Which, I didn't realize that Stephen DeKnight was attached to this in the first place, and it could be because he left before the series actually aired. But when I first saw his name pop up on screen when the first episode, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome! I'm going to love this series," because I pretty much love anything Stephen DeKnight does. Like, Spartacus is still one of my favorite series of all time. It's fantastic. But yeah, no, there's too much going on. There is a lot of story to tell, and I'm not saying that they have a lack of content. There's too much happening in this first season. You don't have enough time to get attached to the characters, and the gap between what happened in the 20s versus what is happening now is too big, because again, the characters are unrecognizable. Walter from 1920 to 2021, not the same person. He's a much more subdued, much nicer person, it seems, now than he was back then. Sheldon seems to have gone like to the opposite extreme, where he was this kind of sweet, naive guy at the very beginning, and then by the time 2021 comes around, he's basically like a dictatorial hard ass, where he's like, no, it has to be this way, period. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It has to be like this. And it's just kind of like, how did we get here?
So would you be
You're
interested
telling
in
me
this?
no.
Would you be interested in season 2?
No.
Like, would you watch it like out of any curiosity to see, like, I mean, I mean, there's always shit to watch, but like, if you had nothing to watch, would you watch it, or
no?
You're done?
I mean, if someone says, wow, in season 2 they fix X, Y, and Z, then maybe I would give it a shot after some other people have already put in the legwork to tell me whether or not they think it's good.
Do you know what annoys me is it's kind of put me off reading the comics. However, a lot of people online did say they're much better than the TV show. However, if you read it in the release
I read
order,
out of order.
The release order rather than the chronological order. So I don't get why, with this coming out, why they'd want to play around with the order, like, you know, because they relabeled them for the Netflix show, but I don't get why they would do that, because like you say, volume 1 was like set in the 50s, which this show wasn't set in the 50s at all.
Right.
So,
I think though some of the changes that they made to the series are better. Like the series is more diverse. They change up the setting, and so like Fitz, who is the black guy in the series, Fitz is a white guy in the comics. So they've updated it to a certain degree, which meant that they have to change a lot of the comic story. I don't really think you lose much by changing that, and diversifying the group of superheroes doesn't really change much either. But no, I'm just not.
So it didn't grab me. I was gonna say, me and my wife, we watched it all this week, and we both kept saying we weren't enjoying it, but we just wanted to get to the end, which is not a good position for as an audience member. Say, I just want to watch it just so
I watched it just so I could see what was happening in the past, but pretty much like every time the present came on, I was on my phone. I would be like playing on my phone when it was the present, and then I would pay attention when they were in the past.
The past stuff I really loved.
Me too. Me too. I would watch an entire second season if it was just the past. I would do that. But again, because they took the time to explain how the Six got their powers, and then just had no explanation as to where the fuck all these kids in the future have these powers from.
I do have a theory about it, like, which I didn't explain in season 1. So all the people on the boat, you saw like kind of the flash of light hitting them, and you saw some symbols going on their faces. Now, I have wondered whether or not those people also got some sort of powers. Like, that's what it's just, I just wondered, maybe like
it has to be something else, right? Because the way that the series sets it up is that only people that are part of the bloodlines are the people that have the powers. But again, there's only 6 of them, so there's no way that just 6 of them could have this many kids.
Yeah, no, well, not. They'd have to have been really populating the earth over the last 100 years. Although maybe, you never know. I mean, it has been 100 years. If they kept having kids every year.
But one of the characters was gay.
So
he ain't having no kids.
Yeah, that's only, well, I guess one of the 6 then. But I don't know. Well, then maybe he could have still decided to go populate. Like,
so basically, in the series, we meet Chloe and Brandon, who are the son of Sheldon and Leslie Bibb's character. I can't remember her name. So that's 2 kids. Walter has a kid. That's 3 kids. Star Fox has a kid. That's 4 kids. And then Fitz has a kid. So 5 kids. That's 5 kids from the original 6 members. So it kills me. Like, where the hell did all these other kids come from?
They must have had other kids. Like, you can't say they all waited until 2000, the year 2000, to start having kids. Like,
unless the kids are aging slower. But I mean, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me how you explain one aspect of superhero powers and then you leave the rest of it to chance. Like,
yeah,
I don't
I
get
know,
it.
no, I'm not overly looking forward to season 2, but a kind of part of me also now wants to watch it just so they can kind of dig themselves out of the hole that was season 1. So
No, I will let someone else watch it, and then I will read their comments about it. So,
or listen to their podcast about it. So
yeah.
Anyway, let's leave it there for Jupiter Sexy. I think we clearly did enjoy the show. It was to be honest, if I summarize in one word, a mess. So,
Yeah, mess. That's perfect.
That's two words, but a mess. We rated it 2.5 out of 5, and in all honesty, that's fairly generous. So, right. We're going to start to wrap up the episode, and as we always do, we move into recommendations. And I know you're going to say, "Oh, I did this last week." However, I only did seasons 1 to 2, so I'm going to be recommending again Line of Duty. So last week I talked about seasons 1 and 2.
That's cheating. I'm just saying that's cheating.
I have managed to now work my way through seasons 3, 4, and 5, and I am now halfway through season 6. It is incredibly addictive. I'll be honest with you. I am probably struggling with going to bed at any reasonable time trying to make my way through this show. So if you watch it, season 1, I'll be honest, is not very good. However, you need to watch that because they do refer back to season 1 every now and again, and season 2 onwards, it's so good. And they've got some good people in this show as well. Like Thandie Newton is in actually season 4, and there's some good well-known people. So they basically have a rotating cast system. So they kind of have your 3 main characters because it's an anti-corruption police squad. So every time they're investigating a new bunch of people, they obviously introduce a new lot of characters every season. However, there's this ongoing storyline which kind of more becomes apparent from season 4. So seasons 1 to 3, it's kind of trickled a little bit. And then when season 4 happens, you kind of start to get it. And I'm halfway through season 6, and even now I'm thinking when we finish, I'm going to go and put it back on. I'm desperate to finish season 6. I want to know who the big villain is. So I've managed to stay away from all the spoilers online. So honestly, watch Line of Duty. It's a BBC TV show here in the UK. I fully recommend. Next week, you'll hear something else from me.
I'm just excited that Mark is actually binging something because Mark usually does not binge. All right, so my recommendation this week, no surprise to anyone that knows me, is Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I was not privy to this series back in 2007 when the very first Mass Effect game released. So I was gifted the trilogy from a friend, and this was in 2012, and ever since then I have been hooked. I know that the Legendary Edition just came out literally a few days ago. But I'm super excited. I'm 80% done with the first playthrough of the first game. They've changed a lot of stuff. I would love to talk more about Mass Effect, and I actually found some people that will let me talk about it. So instead of gushing more here, you can check me out on the Good Game Guys podcast sometime soon. We'll be talking about Mass Effect with those guys. But yeah, that's my recommendation. If you've never played it, this is the perfect time to jump in because you can get all 3 games for the price of 1. So $60 gets you all 3 games. You get all the DLCs except 1, but the one that you don't get is not a big deal. It's from the first game. It's definitely worth it. 3 games for $60. You can't beat it. One of the best trilogies of video games of all time.
I've seen a lot of people hyping about it online, to be honest. So
Love it.
I'm intrigued, but I've got quite a few games sitting on my to-play pile. So I will wait. I'm not going to go and get another game when I've already got 3 from Christmas that I still haven't got around to playing yet. So, I have started one of them, but it's just been a busy year. I can't believe it's already almost June. So.
I know.
Anyway, so our next episode is going to be dropping in a few days' time. So if you're listening to this,
look at us go.
We are bringing you twice the action this week because to celebrate our 50th episode, can you believe it? 50 episodes will be dropping. 50th episode will be dropping. Yeah, I know. So this is our 49th episode, and 50th episode will be dropping midweek. And that episode, we are changing the format as we invited back a guest. And that guest is Derek Flynn, who came on with us last year for our book club episode of V for Vendetta. So you can go and listen to that if you want to prep yourself. And yeah, we're looking forward to you listening to our conversation with Derek.
Yeah. And as a reminder, we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our 6th Late to the Party book club was Akira, Volume 1 by Katsuhiro Otomo. And that episode came out at the end of April. This month, we are covering They Called Us Enemy by George Takei, Justin Eisinger, and Steve Scott.
can also follow us online on Geeks Unleashed. We are everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
And you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Google, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn. We are everywhere. So give us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye.